History remembers her as the Virgin Queen, the monarch who ruled England for more than 40 years and presided over a golden age. But before Elizabeth I became one of England's greatest rulers, she was a frightened 13-year-old girl living in the shadow of powerful men. Every morning, a man came to her bedroom. He arrived barefoot, half-dressed, smiling as though nothing were wrong. He touched her, climbed into her bed, and no one stopped him, not even the woman Elizabeth loved and trusted most, Queen Dowager Catherine Parr. This is the story of the experience that may have shaped England's greatest queen. It is the story of a young princess who learned early that power could be dangerous, that protection could fail, and that survival often depended on herself alone. January 1547. Elizabeth is 13 years old when her father, King Henry VIII, dies. Already she has known loss. Her mother, Anne Boleyn, was executed when Elizabeth was only a child. Now her father is gone as well, though a princess. Elizabeth's position is uncertain. Her 9-year-old half-brother Edward is now king. Her older half-sister Mary stands ahead of her in the succession. Elizabeth is close enough to the throne to be important, yet vulnerable enough to be in danger. She understands this. From an early age, she learns that intelligence is her greatest protection. She studies tirelessly, mastering languages, theology, philosophy, and classical literature. Her governess, Kat Ashley, becomes the closest thing she has to a mother. Into this world steps Thomas Seymour. 38 years old, handsome, ambitious, and charming, Seymour is the brother of Jane Seymour, Henry VIII's third wife and Edward VI's mother. As the king's uncle, he enjoys influence at court, but he wants more power than he has, and he takes an interest in Elizabeth. Only weeks after Henry VIII's death, Seymour proposes marriage to the 13-year-old princess. Elizabeth responds with remarkable maturity. She politely declines, explaining that she is too young and still mourning her father. Within a month, Seymour marries someone else, Catherine Parr, Henry VIII's final wife and Elizabeth's beloved stepmother. The marriage seems natural enough. Catherine had loved Thomas long before she married Henry. Now, free to choose for herself, she marries the man she wants. Elizabeth moves into their household. What follows is one of the most troubling episodes of Tudor history. Soon after arriving, Elizabeth begins waking to footsteps outside her bedroom door. In the early hours of the morning, Thomas Seymour enters her room. Sometimes he is barely dressed. Sometimes she is still in bed. He jokes with her. He touches her. On some occasions, he climbs into bed beside her. Elizabeth tries to avoid him. She rises earlier and dresses before dawn, hoping to prevent the encounters. It doesn't work. Kat Ashley notices the pattern immediately. Concerned and increasingly alarmed, she begins sitting in Elizabeth's chamber during the mornings. She confronts Seymour and tells him to stay away. He ignores her. Even more disturbing is Catherine Parr's role in some of these incidents. Historical accounts describe occasions when Catherine joined Seymour during his visits. Together they teased and tickled Elizabeth in bed, treating the situation as a game. Why Catherine participated remains one of the unanswered questions of history. Perhaps she misunderstood what was happening. Perhaps she believed she could control it by being present. Perhaps jealousy clouded her judgment. We simply do not know. As months pass, Catherine's attitude toward Elizabeth changes. Her affection cools and suspicion grows. Seymour claims he has seen Elizabeth behaving improperly with men, though there is no evidence to support the accusation. Elizabeth is now learning a lesson that many victims of manipulation learn. When the threat lives inside your own home, it becomes difficult to trust your own voice. Then comes one of the most revealing moments in the entire story. In June 1548, Catherine asks Elizabeth to arrange the delivery of a letter to Thomas. Before sending it, Elizabeth writes a brief message in Latin on the outside. The words translate roughly to, "Let him not touch me." She then crosses them out, whether it was a cry for help, a private expression of fear, or a message she hoped Catherine would notice. Those words offer a rare glimpse into Elizabeth's state of mind. Years later, Kat Ashley would testify that Elizabeth sometimes blushed when Seymour's name was mentioned. Some historians have interpreted this as evidence of affection, but blushing proves nothing. A young girl subjected to attention from a powerful older man can feel confusion, embarrassment, fear, shame, or even misplaced attachment. None of that changes the reality of the situation. Elizabeth was 14. Seymour was nearly 40. The imbalance of power was enormous. The crisis finally reaches its breaking point on June 11, 1548. Catherine Parr discovers Thomas Seymour and Elizabeth alone together. The records state that Seymour had Elizabeth in his arms. Catherine reacts with fury. The very next day, Elizabeth leaves the household. She never lives with Thomas Seymour again. Throughout the summer, she suffers from illness, including severe headaches and other physical symptoms. Later, rumors would claim she became pregnant, but there is no credible evidence to support those stories. The simpler explanation may be the correct one. She was a young girl under immense emotional strain. Catherine and Elizabeth exchange affectionate letters during their separation, suggesting that whatever Catherine felt, she still cared deeply for her stepdaughter. Then tragedy strikes. On September 5, 1548, Catherine Parr dies shortly after giving birth to a daughter. Elizabeth never sees her again. Now Thomas Seymour stands alone, and once more his attention turns toward Elizabeth. Following Catherine's death, Seymour begins exploring the possibility of marrying the 15-year-old princess. He sends messages through intermediaries and makes crude comments about her appearance. His ambitions are no longer hidden. Marriage to Elizabeth could bring him enormous political power. But by now he has overreached. Rumors spread that he intends to marry the king's sister without official approval. Worse still, he becomes involved in increasingly reckless political schemes surrounding the young King Edward VI. In January 1549, Thomas Seymour is arrested. The charges are grave. Among other accusations, he is suspected of plotting to gain control over the king and strengthen his own claim to power. Cat Ashley and several members of Elizabeth's household are questioned. Investigators want to know whether Elizabeth was involved. She's only 15 years old, yet during the interrogation she displays the qualities that will one day make her queen. She is intelligent, cautious, and disciplined. She reveals little. She avoids traps. She protects herself without openly defying her interrogators. She survives. Thomas Seymour does not. On March 20th, 1549, he is executed for treason. When Elizabeth hears the news, she reportedly remarks,
"Your Grace,
"This day died a man
Seymour
with
has
much
been
wit and very little judgment." The statement is remarkable for its restraint. No tears, no affection, no defense. Only a cold assessment of a man whose ambition had finally destroyed him.
From a guarded princess to a legendary queen.
And so the lineage fades into history. I have the heart of a king, and of a king of England.